Hello and welcome to this Watford squad assessment episode ahead of the 26-27 season. We're WD18 on your screens and we're in your ears from The Rookery End. And I know you're probably thinking, who's this? Where's John? I'm Charlie. I'm going to be your host for today and I'm joined by Dave.
Hello. Looking forward to this one, guys. I'm going to confess this right at the top of the show. I know next to nothing about this squad. I'm coming along for the ride today because you're educating me as well as the audience on what we think our squad's going to be like this season. I've barely seen any of the friendlies. I've seen highlights. Haven't been to the friendlies. Have been keeping up to date with the updates via Adam's reporting, but that's about it. So this is it. This is my Watford season starting right now.
Dave, get your questions loaded and ready for the lads.
Pressure on.
Mr. Sam Yuko, you well?
All good, thank you, Charlie. All good here. Bit similar to Dave, that I've also tuned out a little bit from Watford. I did go to the Hansa Rostock game, and that was my pretty much only glimpse of Watford so far since that Coventry game on the last day of last season. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a journey for me as well, this video, looking back through the squad and what we got to work with at the moment. So, yeah, no pressure on you at all here, Adam. A bit of heavy lifting maybe for you today.
How you feeling, Adam? You feeling strong?
Suddenly a bit of pressure on for someone to know what they're talking about. It's been good, obviously, been at all the friendly games so far, and I think the last couple gave us a little bit more of an idea of what we can expect, at least at the start of the season. So, hopefully something for us to get stuck into. But as ever with Watford, I would imagine that the squad we're going to put together today could look a little bit different in a month's time.
Or a week's time, who knows?
Yeah.
Adam, last time the guys did an episode was the Hansa Rostock video. We've played Fiorentina since then. Would you mind telling us anything that we learned from last week in that game?
Yeah, I thought Watford played really well in the first half against Fiorentina. Certainly in the Hansa game and then the Fiorentina game. As I said, we got a much better idea of how Dionisi wants the team to look. Compared to Boreham Wood, I don't know if any of you saw that game, but I think anybody there that day would have come away feeling like they had no further idea on what this Watford team was going to look like than they did beforehand. But it's got a little bit better since. I think certainly in terms of the possession play and going forward, like there is quite a nice identity forming. You've got to remember there's been a core of players together who have actually been in pre-season since I think the 21st of June they came back. So they've been together like a good 6-7 weeks now.
Wow.
And it seems like that group have actually gelled quite nicely and formed a nice little unit. There were only 10 first team players fit to start at Boreham Wood. I think Nabizada was the 11th, so he's sort of like an in-between at the moment.
So early. England, I don't think England had played their second group game by then.
No. The Boreham Wood game was on the day of the Norway quarterfinal.
Wow.
So, we're talking quite a little while ago. So, yeah, that kind of core of players with Pollock, Kyprianou, Boller, Bove, Marma, I think they have actually gelled and come together quite nicely. So I'm kind of feeling a bit better about the start of this season than I was a few weeks ago, just because there is that nice group that's developed. And yeah, going forward, like they played some good stuff. Like they seem to be able to find a way to progress the ball. The positions on the pitch that players are picking up are quite interesting, like lots of little half spaces and finding gaps. Lots of the players come down the left-hand side. So Marma's been playing on the left wing in every game. Nabizada's kind of the 10, but plays on the left of the midfield three, just a little bit more advanced. And him and Marma have been on the same page, syncing up really nicely. Like they're just lovely to watch, both those two. And then you've got Bar and Traore as a sort of outlet on the right-hand side. So lots of diagonals and switches over there. And Bove in midfield, really, that's about as good as I've seen him in a Watford shirt against Fiorentina. Obviously, you don't want to read too much into it, and it was quite a big night for him anyway. But he looked like we saw glimpses of the class that we hoped he was going to have when he first signed. Probably more defensive concerns, not just the numbers, which I'm sure we'll come on to, but also that back four trying to defend quite high up the pitch and how they are on the turn is probably more of a concern. But certainly in the possession play, I thought it was quite good. There was some decent stuff there. The game completely fizzled out in the second half with all the changes. The under-21s have been really good and enjoyable to watch, but when you make that many changes in the second half of games, it does fizzle out quite quickly. But feel fairly, certainly more upbeat from those 2 home friendly matches than I thought I would do. But if Watford had lost those games easily, we'd have been talking about how you can't read into pre-season results and performances. So we probably shouldn't the other way. But yeah, no, I think there is a nice group developing for the start of this season. But so many players are still coming back, getting fit. New signings will come in. New signings have come in. That you never know how that feeling is going to be disrupted or compromised quite quickly.
We'll talk about new signings towards the end of the episode. We're going to go through the squad in a lot of detail, each positions, talk about the new signings who've come in, departures that have left. Before we do start with the goalkeepers, Dave, is there any specific question marks you have about the squad from maybe last season or personnel, or questions that you're not too sure about that you want to get the answer from this set?
Well, I mean, it does feel like the sort of perhaps the start of a new cycle, I think, for us now, which may be good or bad. I'm not, time will tell. But, with seeing Chakvetadze go, and quite a lot of players have gone, and there might be more to come to, that go from this point between now and the end of the transfer window as well. And we've got all these lads in so far, all but one from Udinese. I think that's right, isn't it? And it feels like there's a little bit of a reset going on, and I think that potentially could be a positive. I think potentially some of the reasons for that could be concerning as well in terms of like the financial picture. But it has felt like, I don't know if you guys agree, but it's felt like to me for the last sort of three or so seasons we've really been stuck in a rut with the same sorts of players, different managers obviously, but all basically coming up to the same answer in that we don't really have enough goals, we don't really get enough from our exciting players, injuries to key players at bad times have hurt us as well, and like time to draw a line under that era, under the Chakvetadze loser sort of era. Now I know loser's still here, we'll talk about him later, and and try and kick on, try and keep some of our exciting players if we can, like Mama and Bar, and Iran Kunda looks like he will go. But I think it feels like there's been fresh blood already. There might still be more, and it's a little bit of a new start with the new manager, but I'm sure plenty of same old problems along the way.
No doubt. Sam, is there any players, we're going to look at the squad now, is there any players that have departed that you've been particularly upset about? We've seen James Abankwah go back. I don't think there's too much noise about him returning. Maybe we'll ask Adam about that. Tom Ince has rocked up at Tranmere Rovers.
Yeah.
Mr. Penn in the shootout the other night in the preliminary round. Yeah.
When did he miss a pen for us last season?
Ince was Ipswich, I think. Ipswich at home. Yeah.
Head was on Mars. Talking of head on Mars, Sam?
I don't know if there's many players that I feel overly upset that they've departed this summer.
Are you sad about Georgie going?
I was sad with Georgie going in the sense that I think he's a fantastic player, and I think really, really enjoyable to watch. And I think regardless of what division Watford are in, you're always going to have to appreciate seeing players like Georgie Chakvetadze at Watford, because on his day, just a joy to watch, and someone who gets people on the edge of their seat, and someone who just really enjoyable to watch. It's why you go to the football. So I was upset he was going in that sense, but equally, I don't think him staying at Watford was benefiting either party going forward. I think for his career, he needed a change. Udinese, it's him going to Serie A, bit more exposure in a higher division maybe, albeit you could argue the Championship is maybe gets the same level of eyeballs on it as well. But I think the move will do him well in that sense. And I think for Watford, I think it's been so difficult for him to get any real sort of consistency. It felt like last season after he came back from his injury, at least from where I was watching, it was looked like he turned the corner, and then very quickly it would be back to square one with him again. So I don't think we were maybe benefiting from Georgie as much last season. So yeah, not overly upset that he's gone. I think Abankwah was, I still think there's a player in there, James Abankwah. and I was semi-expecting him to come back. Like you said, Charlie, there's been no noise of him coming back, but I wouldn't rule it out necessarily later in the window, particularly if we are still light in those centre-back positions. He can also cover at right-back, so probably a little bit upset that James Abankwah hasn't come back. But other than that, Dave, I think you're right. It's felt like we've needed a reset now. It's felt like that for most of the last few summers, but yeah, it's hopefully we've landed on a good squad now, or at least a good morale, good unit, a good leadership group as well, which I'm sure we'll come on to too. But yeah, I think it was about time to refresh the squad.
Let's tackle this squad then. And at the moment, we've got our three goalkeepers. We can see Egil Selvik, Daniel Bachmann, and our new goalkeeper, and wait for the pronunciation, Federico Raviglia. Adam, have I got that pronunciation right? And tell us what you know about him.
I'd go Ravaglia, I think, but I'm not sure I've actually heard his name spoken out loud by someone who would really know how to pronounce it. This was interesting because it was one of the first names that kind of got wind of as a transfer target after Dionisi's appointment was confirmed. And I kind of get the impression that maybe this is one that's been driven possibly by him to an extent, because something that's been very evident in pre-season is that he wants his keepers to play out and be comfortable with their feet. And that's something he was demanding. At Barnet, we were sort of sitting right behind where he was up and down the touchline, and he was quite animatedly telling off, I think it was Alfie Marriott in goal, for like going long rather than trying to pick a pass out from the back. So that's certainly something he wants his keepers to do. And from what I've been told, Ravaglia is decent with his feet. That's one of his strengths. So yeah, it didn't strike a goalkeeper. I don't think would have struck us as a crucial signing this summer, in the sense that Selvik has been a good number one since he signed. And if he'd just continued as number one, I don't think anyone would have been complaining. I think maybe the way he arrived via Udinese 18 months ago, that January, there's kind of always been a feeling around him that maybe that he's not here forever. Like there's a kind of temporary feel to it. And I wonder whether he's the one who's actually maybe pushed to move on this summer. Obviously, nothing's been confirmed yet, and we're not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen in that respect. But I would predict that he will go this summer, and that a new keeper was targeted by the club as well as by Dionisi. So yeah, Ravaglia arrived. I think he arrived in England like 3 weeks ago now. So it was agreed a little while ago. And then, as has been quite heavily reported, there was like a little something in the medical that showed up. Again, speaking to people in Italy, I think he was suffering with back problems last season that maybe contributed to the pretty poor season he had for Bologna last year, which I can come on to in a minute. But yeah, I think there was a back injury and some talk in Italy of a groin issue as well. I don't think they're injuries that are preventing him from playing, because he has been training and he did play at Brentford on Saturday, but like just little things that meant they reconsidered whether to do it as a loan deal or a permanent deal, and possibly now means that they're just waiting to see what to do with Selvik until it's completely cleared up. But yeah, I mean, he's certainly coming in, I think, as the number one. Like, you don't hand a 6-year deal to a keeper and pay a fee, which doesn't look like will be happening too often this summer for a guy who's not going to be number one. So I'm pretty sure that's the plan. And
doesn't sound like a sure thing from your description so far, but I guess
as a player or as
a player,
yeah,
we are where we are. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm not gonna lose any sleep if we don't see Selvik again. Like I think he came in at a time when Bachmann had really become persona non grata amongst the fan base and was struggling badly, and he was an instant upgrade just because he wasn't Bachmann, and to be fair to him, played well and has had good spells in the team. But I definitely think there were some games last season where he started to look a bit shaky, and teams were putting him under pressure. Like the away game at QPR springs to mind. Maybe that one's heightened in my mind because I was about 3 meters above him and going nuts. My head was on Mars that day for sure. But I don't think we've really had for a number of years now. We've since Foster departed, and before him Gomez, like we've not had a proper keeper that we all trust, implicitly. Like I think the keeper position is still an issue for us, and Selvik was fine, but only that for me. So if it's Ravalia's the new number one, let's see. Let's hope his back and his groin aren't too bad, eh?
I think he didn't have a particularly good season last year. So Bologna are his club. Like, he was born in Bologna, came through the academy, had a few good years as the number 2, where he seemed pretty trustworthy, and when he played, he did well. And then last year, their number 1 picked up a couple of proper long-term injuries, and it gave him the chance to play more often. I think he played 25 games. And I think he made a few mistakes early on, and it kind of compounded. And by the end of the season, he sort of slightly lost the trust of the fans and the club there, which is why they were happy to sell him. So yeah, from the people I've spoken to, like Bologna journalists I've spoken to, he was a pretty solid number 2 for a couple of years, but then by the end of last season needed a move, which is how this has come about. So we're hopefully getting the keeper that was decent for them for a couple of years, rather than one that turned into, I think, more of a bag of nerves last year.
Sam, if Ravilia's going to be our number 1 and Selvik's going to move on, how do you feel about Daniel Bachmann, former club captain, being the number 2? We've seen him pop up in some social content in pre-season. I don't know if you would prefer Selvik to be the number 2, but if that's unlikely, how do you feel about Bachmann back?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Dan. It's clear, I think, from what I've seen, that he's a really well-respected member of the dressing room. I think even when he was struggling with his performances, people still looked at him as a kind of leader, and that's been underlined this week, despite not being here for the vast majority of last season. He's come in and straight away he's back in the leadership group, being led by Matty Pollock. I think it's, who else is it? Bola, Pollock, Cipriano,
Bove.
Yeah, and Dan Bachmann as well. So, yeah, to me that signals that he'll probably be the backup goalkeeper, as well as being that vocal voice in the dressing room. My fear isn't necessarily Dan Bachmann coming back into the team. My fear is the anxiety. I don't know if anxiety is the right word here, but let's say there is a world where Ravaglia gets injured and Bachmann has to come back into the side. The anxiety that could bring to the fan base, just because there are fans, rightly or wrongly, who just aren't having him and won't be willing to give him that chance.
Especially if we're playing out from the back.
Exactly that. And we know that we spoke about Selvik, the way that QPR last season were putting balls right on top of him, and he struggled with that. We know that that's Dan Bachmann's weakness in his game as well. So, yeah, I slightly worry about it from that perspective. But yeah, I think I always try and keep an open mind, particularly players coming back from loans, that, yeah, hopefully that year away has done him good, chance to reset. And yeah, I mean, he's got 2-3 years left on his deal now. So yeah, might be a reality that we're going to have to get used to.
Adam, before we move on to defenders, does that sound about right? We're thinking Ravaglia number 1 and Bachmann number 2 for the season?
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if both Ravaglia and Selvik stay. Also, you've got to consider the homegrown slots that we have to fill in the squad. So you have to have 7 homegrown players in your matchday squad of 20. And the number 2 keeper is the easiest way to fill one of those slots. And Bachmann counts as homegrown. So I think the only doubt is he's still on the contract he signed when he was made club captain 3 years ago. So I would imagine his salary is kind of club captain level. So if the right offer came in, I'd imagine there could still be movement. But at the moment, he's well respected within the squad, as Sam says. He actually was around a lot last year as well, because even though he was out on loan twice, he picked up injuries early on in both and was having treatment back at the training ground. So it's not like he's new back there. They've been around him throughout last season. He's really popular. I think he's fine as a number 2 keeper. So yeah, as long as that salary is manageable, then I think it's a pretty good solution. And as long as he's happy with it as well.
We're going to talk about academy players a bit later on, and any that we think will break through. I'm just looking, Alfie Marriott has just gone on loan. Mm-hmm. Who would be the goalkeeper that might come in if, like we said, we did get a good offer for Selvik or Bachmann, or do you think they'd not let both of them go?
I I think they definitely would like a homegrown number 2. So I'd imagine at the moment Bachmann is first choice. He seems pretty settled. He's played through pre-season. Yeah, all the things we've said. And then you've got Jonathan McCauley, who was third choice for a fair amount of last season, who I would imagine now will carry on as number 3. If Bachmann was to go, I don't think I would suspect that Selvik will be leaving basically whatever happens unless there's an issue with Revalia. So if Bachmann were to go, they'd probably try and find a new homegrown number 2. But as long as everyone's happy, I think Bachmann's a pretty solid shout to stay.
Right, we spent too long on goalkeepers already, so let's look at the defensive unit. At right back, we've got Jeremy Ngakia, a new signing Omar Traore, Patrice. You can see the lonely Matty Pollock and Kevin Caben there at centre back, and at left back, Mark Bowler and Jordan Zamora, another new signing with championship experience. Who previously played at Brentford, who previously played at Bournemouth, but of course from Udinese. Mike actually asked a question when looking at the defence. He said he's waiting on centre-back recruits, one of the biggest gambles we've ever made if we've just got Pollock and Caben.
Well, look, going into the season with just 2 of them is not a great place to be. I think, Adam, you can correct me here, but it seems like they're waiting for potentially Mafuni to come back, or at least maybe a loan from a Premier League club, be that Man City or elsewhere, in terms of bolstering that position. But you still need more than just Funi, or is Elaine going to come back? People have been saying, we could get them both back. As we saw last season, it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to go by what Manchester City want to do, whether they want to release those players, whether the new manager there wants them around the squad, whether they have injuries, etc. But we clearly need more players in that position. We can't rely on Pollock and Keben. You need, sometimes you need five centre backs really, because we've had seasons in the last few where we've had real problems with injuries at centre back, haven't we? When we've only had you think you're okay on 4. And all of a sudden, you're having to play fullbacks at centre back if a couple of them get injured or there's a suspension in there or whatever. So, it's clearly an issue, clearly a concern at the moment. We've heard Scott Duxbury say on the podcast that he does about Dionisi being in his ear, saying we need centre backs, we need centre backs, we need centre backs. I wonder what his opinion is of the 2 that we have, whether he wants centre-backs to play instead of them or whether he just wants centre-backs to play, to be in the squad, to be in squad with them. Pollock's obviously got the captain's armband now, which I think is interesting. Depending on the quality of the other recruits that we get in that position, is his place in the team guaranteed? It wasn't last season all the time, but I can see why he's got the armband. He's clearly a leader, clearly very passionate about the club and wants to be here and wants to do well for us, which certainly can't have been said about all the players in the last few years. So I get it, but it'll be interesting to see how that develops over the season, whether he actually does stay in the team the whole season or not.
Sam, how are you feeling about the centre-back department, especially Kevin Caben, who's a bit of a curious player, because there were spells where we were calling him a Rolls Royce. I know it seems like a million years ago, but he did have some good spells at Watford, but he seems to have completely fallen off.
Yeah.
Is this the biggest worry for you?
It is, yeah. There have been some, like you said, Charlie, really good moments with Kevin Caben. I think he's got pace. He's got, I think he's got good recovery within him as well. But too often last season, I think we saw the real downside to his game. I think he can be rash. I think he can jump into tackles too easily as well. And I think he's also slightly injury prone as well and prone to suspension. So just having the 2 of them at centre back, it isn't enough. And like we said, the situation is most probably we're waiting on seeing what happens with Premier League squads. Can we get Max Elaine back? Can we get Stefan Feeney back? And also potentially what's happening at Udinese as well. Could James Abankwah come back? Wouldn't feel necessarily like a complete reset if it's Pollock, Caben and Abankwah. Probably need some fresh legs in there and some new faces in the building. But yeah, it's definitely an area that we need to look at. But I mean, it's interesting as well what you say, Dave, about Matty Pollock's place being guaranteed as captain, because I think Matty was really good last season. I think he deserved the player of the season come the end of it as well. But I think you're right in terms of it depends on who that centre back partner is going to be for him as well, because I don't think him and Caben complement each other that well necessarily.
There's definitely concerns with those two playing in the high line, like I mentioned earlier. Pollock, like, I love him, and he's definitely the right pick for club captain. I don't think there was another choice. He's been de facto captain in terms of being a vocal leader in the dressing room for a little while, and I think this just gives him the license to take that on even further. And I think he's properly connected with Watford and the people at Watford and so on. So there was no other choice. Definitely the right pick. But as a player, he's a really good box defender, and when balls are coming in and it's bodies on the line and heading crosses away and so on, I think he's great. And he had a few games last season where he was quite heroic, I guess, in the way he defended. But you do see when he plays in a high line against agile forwards that when he's turned, he's not a quick turner, and he's not particularly quick even running in a straight line. And yeah, certainly on the turn, when strikers get round him, he tends to just grab them and commit a foul rather than try and get back in. So that's where I think Abankwah will be missed. I think it's a shame that Abankwah's not back. Quite interested to see how he gets on at Udinese, because he's properly on their pre-season tour and in the mix there, I think, which is part of the reason he's back there. But yeah, centre-back is clearly by far the biggest concern in the squad. On the loanee, like, it's quite clear that loanees are what they're looking at. Kind of with Dave, like, I don't think there are any guarantees that the City boys come in. Like, City will have lots and lots of offers for both those two. I would imagine near enough every team in the league would like to sign them. I think there have been permanent offers or permanent interest from Premier League and Bundesliga clubs in both of them. So yeah, we may be waiting on loans, and that's completely understandable. Like, Premier League loans, we've hardly seen any yet. They're going to get done later in the window. But interested to see what's been kind of lined up behind the scenes and what they're hoping will get done. Because I don't think it's as simple as we get our pick of the Man City loans. Like, they've got agents, there's money, there's lots of different hurdles to clear. So I'd imagine loans will come in. And centre-backs will come in from somewhere. They're not going to leave the squad with two centre-backs, but it's obviously a case of the quality they can get their hands on. And we should at some point reference the fact that Scott Duxbury said at the beginning of the summer we'd be looking for proper EFL experience to create a British core, a hardened EFL team, or more of a hardened EFL team. And bar Jordan Zamora, who does have decent experience, that hasn't really happened yet. And I think centre-back is a position they would have liked to have made it happen. So yeah, all these factors are in the mix, and I guess there's a little bit of pressure on to get the centre-back position right. I also should mention Travis Akamea, who's been really good in pre-season and actually looks the part, like, looks like a proper centre-back build, seems to have all the attributes, and I would prefer to have him in the squad maybe as that fifth choice than sign a third squad filler player. I think there's an opportunity to get some of these young guys properly in the squad. And so I'd sort of half consider him a third option at the moment rather than there just being two, but definitely need to bring at least two in.
Wesley who on a free?
Yeah, well, is that one of your suggestions?
I was just having a look quickly at the free agent market for centre backs, and then Wesley who
he'd be great, wouldn't he?
Wouldn't mind it, you know.
No, we've got to move on, lads. It ain't 2022 anymore.
Bring back Porteous as well while we're there. Adam, just before we move on to the midfielders, what do we think the back four will be for Southampton? And have we seen Jeremy Nketiah at all pre-season?
No, he's been at all the games, but I think he's got a back injury, which is, unfortunately, the latest instalment in that story, which he came back in the summer with. And I think he has trained a bit, but not been fit enough to play. So yeah, he's been in the stands for all the games. So Traore will definitely start right back. He looks solid. And I think unless a player comes in this week, it's hard to imagine a new centre-back being thrown into the starting 11 for Southampton. So I suspect it will be Traore, Pollock, Keben and Bola.
I did see a video. I think it was from the pre-season game behind closed doors against Brentford of Iran Kunda winning a penalty. Was it Jeremy Petrie? I couldn't quite make it out, Adam,
I think
from
so.
the video. Was it Petrie who made a ridiculous run forward from our own box and managed to play a lovely ball through? I mean, interesting. I thought he'd go Petrie, but seems that he
I
could stick
think
him around.
I think he was basically told he is free to go, certainly earlier in the summer, but possibly the Ngakia situation has held that up a little bit. I actually think he's played all right in pre-season, but I think he was just one of those who was, we've talked about a reset, a culture reset, all those things, like maybe moving on from the group that finished last season. He's one of those who I think the club would happily sell if everything goes how they'd like this summer. But I still think there's a capable player there when he switched on. That was
had his moments.
He's rapid, and I think also he's more of a wing back than a full back, which kind of held him back from early on last season when he was signed to play right wing back, and then Javi came in and moved to a back four straight away. So he's been a little bit unlucky there, but yes, sometimes you see a decent player in him, I think.
Right, let's move on to the midfield. And we had some transfer reporting going on today. So before we ask Adam if he knows anything, Imran Loser, apparently there's interest from Paris FC. Dave, you mentioned kind of a new cycle. How are you feeling about Imran Loser? Obviously, he was our club captain. Is he a player that, if we can keep him, you'd like to see him stay, or do you think it's time for him to move on?
I think we all expected him to go this summer. And it's a tricky one, because seeing shots of him coming on against Fiorentina and got the armband briefly, didn't he? And it's if you can have a motivated Imran Loser who is playing well and fits in the system, like, why wouldn't we want him in the squad? He's obviously one of the best midfielders in the Championship when he's playing well and when it's all working. But there just has been this feeling, same as what you were saying, Sam, about Chakvatadze, like the time has come. We haven't had success with him being a central part of the team. Not all his fault by any stretch, but it has felt that perhaps he's not always the most positive influence on the squad, even though he was captain. And I can see why we would move on from him. There's clearly a talented player there, but he's also one of our handful of very saleable assets. And we obviously need to raise the funds, like we always need to. So if an offer comes in from Paris FC or any other club, or even if they have to shift him across to Udinese and do whatever they need to do to make that work, I think it's time to move on. But if you told me that on September the 1st he was still going to be a Watford player, is it the worst outcome? I'm not sure. I don't know if you know Adam at all, but like, we have this lingering feeling that perhaps he's not a positive influence, and that could be nonsense. It could be pure speculation. I don't know. But if he's motivated and he's playing in the team and it's all working, then great. Imran Loser is a brilliant player, and it'd be good for us to have him. But it feels like, for a variety of reasons, it's time to move on.
They definitely thought at the club at the end of last season that would be that. I mean, even if you take away all the speculation and little bits and bobs you hear and whatever else, like, he was club captain during that period at the end of last season that was absolutely terrible and verging on unprofessional. So I think that sticks with him anyway. I think also with the captaincy, no one's blaming him for asking to leave. He's got ability which could see him play at the top level somewhere around Europe, but it is now 2 summers in a row when he's come in at the end of June, start of July, and asked for a transfer. So I think there comes a stage where you've got to sort of stop hanging your hat on this guy and putting him in charge of the dressing room. I think what's interesting is, usually with player sales that we've made over the years, they are done before that player is sort of integrated into the team during the summer. So I was looking back at the sales that have been made, and I think Emmanuel Dennis, when he went to Forest, was the only one, the big one, who was in the team and then sold. And that's possibly a similar situation to now, where you're kind of playing him until you don't have him anymore. But generally, if you think back to João Pedro, Asprilla, Ismail Assar, Ismail Kone. Like they were all done without those players coming back into pre-season and being part of the team. And that's how it was looking like it was going to be with Loser. Now he's back in, I'm a little bit more uncertain because I don't think he would have been reintegrated if anything was close. And if it looked like he'd definitely be going. And I would imagine now the possibility that he stays is there. I don't think the interest in him has matched what he expected or maybe the club expected, which has also been a bit of a theme. Like I don't think there was as much interest last summer as anyone expected, and it's kind of happened again. Whether that's him setting his standards a little bit high, I'm not so sure. But now he's back in the picture, I think there's a possibility he stays. Paris FC obviously saw that stuff today. Like Paris FC had been mentioned for quite a while. Like they were being mentioned around April, May kind of time as the team who were going to come in hard for him. So whether this is just a sort of story that's almost like because of the interest a little while ago, why it wouldn't have happened by now if it was going to, I'm not so sure because he's been absolutely available. Yeah, I think he could still go and there will be interest, and I'm sure as the window goes on and teams need a midfielder, we'll get these kind of loans with obligation offers and that kind of thing. That wouldn't shock me too much. But generally, once Watford have got players back in the first team mix, they're not quick to sell. And he's got 2 years left on his deal, so there's no pressure to sell him or risk losing him for nothing straight away. So yeah, I think it probably is time to move on in the same way that it was with Shakhtar Tadze, but at the same time, like he's the midfielder who created everything for us last season. Best set piece taker, best long range shooter, best passer. He's going to be a hell of a miss, but if the right offer comes in, it could be time. But I think it's telling that it hasn't come in yet.
Sam, what is that right offer? What would you take for your mate Imi?
Fee-wise, 2 years on his deal. It's really difficult, particularly because as the window goes on now and there's less time potentially to look at offers. And if Loser does want to go, then Watford might be backed into a corner a little bit of maybe having to accept lower offers than they want. I think I'd probably value him at around the 8 to 10 million mark. I think with the time left in the window, though, and the situation with Loser, I think we'll be lucky to get around the 5 to 6 million mark. Is that harsh, or do you think...
Why do you think we value him at that kind of level when we talk about him as our best player? And then we're talking about Iran Kunda for 20 million. I know he's obviously the age is a factor, but it feels like Loser has never been talked about as a real gem in this squad in transfer value in the way that the others are.
Is it not likely to get a lower fee because, without sounding too harsh, we want to kind of get rid of him more than we do one of our younger, more exciting prospects?
Yeah, and maybe
who could flip more money than he would.
I think maybe he's not a physical powerhouse, is he? Which is the type of midfielder that maybe Premier League clubs spend money on. Yeah, there's always and maybe it's just the way he plays. Like he doesn't rack up the goal numbers and so on. But yeah, it's never felt like we've talked about him as that 15, 20 million big sale in the way that we have done with others, even though we all value him as our best midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, Imran Loser's been here now for about 5 years. And one thing I always say that I find incredibly weird to think about when you think of sort of timescales of Watford, Imran Loser's debut was Troy Deeney's last ever game for Watford. So they actually overlapped, and that's how long Loser's been at Watford for. I think partly one of the reasons why Watford fans would maybe have his valuation lower is because, let's be honest, in these 5 or 6 years that he's been here, it hasn't been a good 5 or 6 years. He's always been a constant part of that team. I think it's the same as Edo Kayembe, who a lot of Watford fans aren't necessarily the biggest fans of because he's just been part of teams who haven't necessarily had success. So I think a lot of it is just linked to that. Whereas someone like Iran Kunda or Amama haven't been here long enough, I think, to almost, I don't want to say lose favour with Watford fans, but I think it's just because Loser's been here for so long now and hasn't had any success over a sustained period that Watford fans look at it lower. But I think from the outside, actually, a lot of fans might think, how on earth are they valuing him so low? Because a bit like Shakhtar Tadze, actually, a lot of fans would turn around and say that Luz was one of the best players that they played against last season. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I mean, I'm interested as well what you all think. What if he does go now? What sort of fee do you think Watford would get for him? So I think 5 to 6 million is what we'd be looking at now.
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit more than that, but no more than 10. And if the Udinese option is kicked into gear at the end of the window, we'll probably never know. But maybe something similar.
I think it's perhaps telling that, given what we know about him as a player and how good he is, clubs will obviously have got the numbers, the data analysis. His numbers are decent enough, I think. And that they played, and the fact that Championship clubs have now played against him for a number of seasons, the fact that no Championship club has come in to take him, and it looks like he's going to end up going back to France, I think is telling. Because I think if a Championship club really fancied him, like one of the clubs that are properly pushing for promotion, they could come in with a bid of between 10 and 15 million, which is, clubs often spend that sort of money when they're pushing for promotion. Come in and take him, but they haven't, which suggests to me that they know something, that perhaps it's not all about the ability and they don't want him.
Let's move on for our mate Imran Louza. We shall see where he ends up and look at the rest of the midfield. We've got Eduardo Bove, Edo Kayembe, as Sam mentioned, Hector Cipriano, Imran Louza, and new signing Parejo, who used to play for Middlesbrough. I was a bit upset to see he was Argentinian, still upset after the England semi-final exit. And we've got a new signing as well in Ika Bravo and Amin Nabizada, who I've got in the kind of number 10 position. Adam, am I right in saying that formation shape-wise, are we looking at a 4-3-3? Would that midfield be a 3?
Yeah, so it's kind of been a lopsided 4-3-3. So you've had Cipriano at the base, Bove kind of partnering him, but to the right, and then Nabizada to the left, but much more advanced. So yeah, I think Dionisi described it as a 4-3-3 last week, but Nabizada definitely the most advanced of the three. As I said, I think Bove, hopefully we're going to see something from him this season that we didn't see last year. Like,
how did he look physically the other day? Because I know you talked about his class, but in terms of him getting around the pitch, how did he look?
Much better, and he's also played a lot of minutes this summer. I think he's played more minutes than near enough any outfield player. He played about 80 at Boreham Wood on that first game back. I think 80 odd against Hansa, and then another 60 on Wednesday. So in terms of minutes, he's getting through them. He looked sharp as well, like pressed well, energetic against Fiorentina, so that was good. And I think that's actually, I know I mentioned class, but like his pressing ability, Mourinho called him a dog, didn't he, or something like that. Like, his ability his tenacity is a big part of his game, and that was definitely there. Yeah, it was difficult for him last season. Probably the hype around him when he signed and how everyone was talking about him. I think certainly in hindsight, like he was never ever going to live up to that, considering his circumstances. But at the same time, sometimes when a player doesn't get off to a fast start somewhere, you kind of wonder whether it's ever going to happen. And I think he does need to get off to a fast start this season. As you said, Charlie, there's quite a lot more competition in midfield now. And if he was to drop out or not show much more than what we've seen already, you'd probably start to question whether the Championship is for him. But it's still early days to be talking that way. And I think he'll probably start the season in the team. So that's his opportunity. Probably the biggest talking point in that midfield at the moment, well, there are two. It's who starts in that advanced position. I think Nabizada's been great, and I definitely would like to see him start the season. I think it would send a really good message out that performance is more important than being a new signing, or you've played for Spain at the under-19 Euros or whatever it is. Like, I'm sure Bravo's a good player. I'm sure others, Pajero is a good player, but Nabizada's the one who's been in pre-season and impressed. I think he's really fun to watch as well, and that's something we could do with a bit of at the moment at Watford. So I'd like to see him play. And then in that sixth position, I think that's the biggest question mark, because Cipriano does his thing well. But I think sometimes his possession play and how he can dictate the game from the deeper position isn't his strength. So I think if Loser is available or Pajero comes in to the thinking, then I think that slot is probably the most open at the moment.
Your pronunciation was a lot more exotic than
I think
mine.
it's Pajero. Yeah, the
Pajero.
Y. Yeah.
Do you think he would be, whereabouts do you think he'd fit into that midfield? Because I agree with you. I think Cipriano is a lot better in a 2.
Yeah.
I don't think he's good enough on the ball to kind of receive it on the turn and kind of help us build up the thirds, which is a bit of a concern, especially if Loser does end up going and we've only got Cipriano in that position. Again, will we bring in another player in that position? But yeah, where do you think the new boys will fit in there?
I think he would be. I think you're right. I think Loser's probably the one who could take Cipriano's spot at the base of midfield. I think they played quite well together at times last season. But if we think that Bove's got a march on that first spot next to Cipriano, then you probably have Cipriano or Loser deepest. And then I would say Pajero could. I mean, the first 3 games of the season are tough. The first 3 league games of the season are tough, and that they might be games where you actually don't play that 10 and you go for a sort of more solid 3. And then so you bring in an extra midfielder, whether that be Kayembe or Pajero, on the left side of the 3 next to Cipriano. I think he's more of a box-to-box player. He's not necessarily a sitter. He likes to pick up the ball, dribble with it, carry it forward, surge forwards, and get into the box as well. So he's probably an 8 or someone who plays either side of the sitting player rather than that player. So it kind of depends how Dionisi wants to put his midfield together. Yeah, I think on Saturday in the League Cup, I think Nabizada or Bravo will start as the attacking midfielder, but it wouldn't shock me for Southampton if we saw either Kayembe or Pajero come into that midfield. I feel like Kayembe is the forgotten man, but
is he back yet?
Yeah, he is back, and we know that every coach seems to love him. He seems to train well. He's again a valued member. I think the players like him. Players respect how good he is as well, maybe more than fans. Wouldn't shock me at all if he's quite quickly back in contention to start.
He feels like another.
Twitter would be an interesting place.
Yeah, he feels like another part of this underwhelming era that we could move on from, and that's not really a comment on him as a player. Like, and he has his obvious strengths and weaknesses. Like, he's had his moments, but he's clearly not a world beater. But yeah, you're right. He sort of hangs in there. A succession of coaches trust him to play, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does stay. But it'd be a fitting sort of footnote to Imran Loser's career if he ends up, the last game he ever plays for Watford ends up being 10 minutes off the bench against Crawley in the League Cup on a Saturday in August.
We were there. Sam, we're going to talk about the forwards now, but more transfer rumours breaking today about Nestori Irankunda off the back of a good World Cup. Scored that goal in Australia's first game. I think Adam will be able to give more detail about this. I think the reported fee was around £16 million, but obviously with Bayern's percentage that they earn, we wouldn't get that full amount. How are you feeling about Irankunda potentially leaving that kind of fee? Obviously, this is the area that we feel that we've got the strongest and most depth. However, when we look at the squad depth chart in a bit, on that right side next to him is Quadro Bar, so there's obviously injury problems there. But how are you feeling about Irankunda potentially leaving?
Yeah, when he scored that goal in the World Cup, I sort of said my goodbyes then, and I'm over it now. But yeah, I think it's a matter of time before Irankunda goes. That interest has been there throughout the summer, particularly from Sporting, and there's no smoke without fire. So yeah, I think it would definitely be a step up for him, one that I think he's probably ready for, as he showed in the World Cup. Sporting they're in the Champions League, I think, as well. So it would be, or they've got some sort of European football. So it would be an opportunity for him to show himself even more on the biggest stage. So yeah, but without doubt, it's going to be a big loss for Watford. He had a bit of a strange season. I think he obviously came out the traps, flying those 2 free kicks early on in the season against Swansea and Southampton at home, and then he had that situation with was it Paolo Pezzolano at Portsmouth away where he got subbed off, and I think there was a bit of a lull period for him after that, that he got sent off against, was it Millwall at home, I think. He got sent off against Swansea, yeah, he got sent off. And then it took a while, I think, for us to see his heights again, and then he was fantastic in some games towards the back end of the season. Charlton at home particularly sticks out, where he scored a really well taken goal. So once he gets that consistency in his game, I think he'll be a fantastic player who is definitely ready to make the step up. My question towards Irankunda would be, would it be a year too early or 6 months too early for him? There's been some talk this week on Yasser Asprilla being made available to leave Girona. There are a few other players, I think, who have left in the last few years, you could argue, left a little bit too early. Ismail Kone's another one, although I think he's found his feet again. I think Irankunda could benefit from another 6 months to a year at Watford, but I understand why he would go, and I think he would make that step up as well.
I think I sort of both agree and disagree with you there, because I think he could. I don't think he's necessarily ready to make the step up into a team playing at the highest level yet. I think clearly there's inconsistencies in his game. Clearly, he's still maturing, he's still developing. He's clearly got amazing potential and just such a brilliant ball striker, so quick, so direct, like a lot of things that clubs will love. I think he could do with another season. But I don't necessarily think another season at Watford helps him. I think he could do with a season at a settled club with a coach who's going to develop him before he makes the jump. And I think you've seen players like Asprilla. Yeah, he had 2 seasons in the team at Watford, then he got his move. But could he have done with another season? But again, the environment and the culture at Watford, we get a lot of young players through the door and we sell them. But we don't serve them that well when they're here, I don't think, because of the change of coaches. Changing of coaches is really bad for young players because they need that influence. They need that consistency. They need to be bedded in and helped along the way. And when you've got a new coach every few months like we routinely have, I think that's really harmful for trying to develop young players. So, yeah, I would love him to stay from a pure footballing point of view. He's a really exciting player. I think, there's more to come from him. I think there is a danger that if he goes and jumps up to the next level now, that maybe he gets swallowed up a little bit. But we also, look, Adam, you'll know this more than any of us. Like, the financial reality is we have got to sell players every summer to balance the books. And at the moment, he's just about the most saleable asset that we have, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the Shakhtar Tadze move to Udinese sort of gave them a bit of breathing room financially. But I mean, I think at the start of the summer, Louza and Shakhtar Tadze were the two who the club were looking to move on and felt, as we've said, that they've maybe come to the end of the road. The interest in Irankunda, I think they would genuinely like to keep him for another year, but it's obviously increased with what's happened at the World Cup. And if an offer comes in at that kind of 20 million level, even though for him as a player, it may make sense to stay for another year. Firstly, he's not going to turn down a move to Sporting, I don't think. Like, Sporting is a potential gateway to Arsenal, like we saw with Gyökeres, and huge moves in the future if it goes well there. So it's not a move he's likely to say no to because he could do with another year in the Championship, I don't think.
Yeah.
And if it did reach around 20 million, you've kind of got what they like to think about is peak value and whether you're getting the best offer you're ever going to get for a player. And even if he took off this season and had the season of his life, unless we were promoted, you're probably not going to, like, João Pedro was 30 million 3 years ago and everyone recognised he had world-class potential. it's hard to imagine it going higher than that 25-30 million range, even if he had a top season. So I think an offer of 20 million now is probably going to be quite hard to turn down based on what you'd be risking if his value didn't increase over the next year, which is possible, partly for the reasons you've said, that young players, I don't know how much they actually improve at Watford. More so, they show off what their skill set is. They show off their attributes enough to make other clubs want to buy them. And that keeps the lights on at Watford. And it's a model that the way they unearth these players is really impressive and it pays the bills every year. But Watford as a team have got worse over the last 7 years, despite the number of names we could reel off who have played for us in that time. So, I think the risk would be that his value actually won't get any higher than it is now, or certainly it's not worth risking that it would. So it just depends if that offer comes in. I mean, I think a lot of the noise around him this summer has come from the sporting end, has come from Portugal, potentially trying to unsettle him or letting their fans know that they're in talks to sign this guy or whatever. Like, my understanding from the Watford end is that the kind of money that's been talked about in Portugal has never actually been offered to them. They've turned down bids of around 10 million from Premier League, like from Hull, from Sporting, possibly others from around Europe as well. And so it would need to be, I think, much closer to that 20 million mark. But I think Asprilla was 18 million and they kind of view him in that kind of ballpark, possibly even having greater potential than him. So I think 20 million, and obviously you've got to consider that a fair amount of that gets siphoned off to Bayern as well. So if someone gets close to 20 million, that will probably do it. And then that would be the big
Bayern.
sale.
Let us have it. Let us have the money, Bayern. You don't need it.
Well, that was the report in Portugal today, that basically there are talks with Bayern about how much of it they, I don't know if, because Watford did buy 10% of the sell-on fee, whether more of that could be bought at the rate that they paid for him last summer. Not quite sure how that works, but
okay.
If I was to put my money anywhere, it would probably be on him being the major sale between now and the end of the month. But again, like I said with Loser, he's now been reintegrated. He's playing in friendlies. He's involved, and Watford don't often sell from that position. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Let's complete this forward line, this exciting forward line we've got. Well, exciting wingers we've got. We've mentioned Quadro Bar on the right. Off-man Marma, who's played a lot in pre-season. For what it's worth, I think he's probably our biggest talent. I was so impressed with him last season. And you could even see his connection with Mark Bowler in pre-season on that left. Him starting on that left-hand side. Rocco Vata, it was really good to see him play against Fiorentina. We know how talented he is. And then we come to our two striking options in Kurumgor and Dumbia. Sam, who's starting for Watford next season up front?
Wow. Difficult. Another area that really, really needs to be addressed. Not only because we're light on numbers, but I also feel that quality-wise, we could probably do an upgrade there. I really like Dumbia. He definitely hasn't kicked on in the way that we would have wanted him to. It's felt like the last 18 months for him have been a bit stop-start, with injuries, with there was suspension as well. So it's felt like a little bit stop-start, but there's definitely a player in there. Just haven't seen it on a consistent basis enough. Kurumgor, we've had this debate before. There are some good bits to his game, but is he good enough to be leading the line in the Championship? I'd probably say no. And it probably wouldn't have been my choice to sign him permanently. But the club clearly see something in him to make that move permanent. I've seen it. I think a lot of people, like I said, I only watched the Hansa Rostock game, but people are saying that he really has struggled in pre-season. I think there was a chance that he missed against Fiorentina as well. So definitely an area that we need to upgrade on. If you pushed me for an answer, though, I'd probably go with Dumbia or neither, and we go with maybe someone like Rocco Vata down the middle.
Adam, is it likely that the club are going to buy that magical 20 to 30 goal striker this window?
Just that 28-year-old 30-goal Championship man that we're all after.
Bring him in.
I mean, I don't think it's definitely not been ruled out, but not been ruled in either. I think yeah, we all know the financial situation and the type of players they've maybe tried to target this summer and not been able to get over the line because of salaries. Like the player we're thinking of, so Ollie McBurney, Patrick Bamford type, like I just don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, those two are off the market who have been available on free transfers over the last year. And I think salary-wise, Watford would have been blown out the water for either of them. And so a player of that stature, yeah, I don't see it happening. I could be wrong, but I don't see how that's going to work. So I guess you've got a few options then, which is to potentially go for someone who's much older, like a 35-plus-year-old who's past his best, but at least is an experienced figure to work with these two younger strikers. What I would guess would happen is the second option, which is that they try and sign someone on loan from a Premier League club, but that would be a young striker, possibly a type of like a Max Elaine type profile from last summer who hasn't really played any senior football, but has done really well in PL2, scores goals, talented young player. I can see that.
Daniel Jefferson?
Daniel Jefferson is pushing for Bournemouth first team honours this summer. So I see.
Is he?
Yeah, he's on their tour scoring goals. I did actually think that because if he hadn't played for us, we'd probably be talking about him as someone we'd target, but I don't think they're going to go back there. So yeah, my best guess, and it is a complete guess, is that it could end up being a sort of 18, 19, 20-year-old on loan from out of the Premier League, top end of the Premier League, who is not the finished product, but maybe brings qualities in that front line that we don't currently have. But yeah, it's an awkward situation because it's an expensive spot to fill. But clearly we're like the team is massively capped in terms of what it can achieve with the centre forward options that we currently have. Like I think they've both got potential, but they are very much developmental players and have way too many off days. Keremgard, I think, you see his confidence drain out of him really quickly as well. And I think he probably is now feeling the pressure and knows maybe how people feel about him, or certainly can sense it from the stands during games. Doumbia, I really like Doumbia. I'm with Sam. I'd start Doumbia. The season does start this weekend, and I would start him. But yeah, it's hard to imagine this being a team that really challenges at the right end of the table without an upgrade up front. And I would guess that maybe someone will come in on loan who we're hoping provides that upgrade. I can't imagine the finished product coming in.
If we're going to press from the front, it has to be Doumbia. Keremgard is, he's not as mobile. He scored more goals than Doumbia last season. He scored 9 goals. Doumbia got 4. But I give Doumbia a run. I was just looking at his minutes last season. He had 5 games in a row where he started up front for us before he left to play for Mali at AFCON. And then after that, it was very sporadic. He was involved most games, but he wasn't always starting. Wasn't always up front. And, the season obviously fell away. But I would just, back him at the start of the season and say, you're our centre forward right now. Unless we sign someone else, you're playing. And just see if he can get some momentum going and see if we can get those flashes that we have seen. Because when he's scored goals, when he's played well, he really has looked like, wow, look, there's a real serious player in there. Good finisher, quite dynamic, quick, quite instinctive at times. But we haven't seen enough of it. But Charlie, you were saying to us the other day in one of the WhatsApp groups that you're convinced that there's still a player in Keremgard.
Yeah, I think some of his finishes that we saw last season were finishes that I haven't seen at Watford at the Vic in years. Really instinctive first-time finishes when he's had good crosses from the right from Ngakia. I just think the way we deployed him, and you spoke about how we don't develop talent because of the head coach situation. The way we deployed him last season and our build-up in terms of hoofing it to him and expecting him to pull it down against 2 big championship experienced centre-half and then move it on. I just don't think that's his game at all. I think we need to get more balls into the box, link up with him better, short passes around the box. I honestly feel like there is a player in there, but like Adam said, I think his confidence is shot and it went downhill from the season. So I mean, there were links with him for big clubs around Europe when we signed him. And again, it just goes to that recruitment strategy that falls down. And that's where we are. So I think
agree
there's
with
a
that.
player
But
in
I
there.
think like we can talk idealistically about like the idea of like short little passes and setting up chances for him in the box and so on. But like there is also a reality to being a championship centre forward for a team that isn't going to go and dominate games, finds it difficult to play away from home. And I think we're always going to need someone who brings a bit of physicality and makes life awkward for centre backs. With the team at the level that it currently is. And Doumbia, I think, is a pain in the arse to play against. He makes life awkward. He backs in. He uses his body really well. We scored goals last season on the counter-attack where he held the ball up. And it's not conventional, but the ball sticks to him. And then you play from there. Whereas for me, I think too many centre-backs would have come off the pitch last season thinking they had an easy day up against Keremgard. And I think, however, like it's hard to imagine us getting so much better and being so dominant this season that that's not going to be a problem. So I agree with you about elements of his game that are good, but the team in its current guise and with, I think, genuine goal threats from the wide areas. I think Marma, Vata and Irankunda are proper goal threats who could score 8, 9, 10 goals in a season. I'd play the striker who's a better foil for them. I think that's just more likely to suit us.
Nice. Okay. Before we look at this squad in its totality, just wanted to mention the academy players, which we will probably have to rely on this season. We've mentioned Travis Akoma already. Ciccavani has been quite exciting this pre-season. He scored against Hansa Rostock and came on against Fiorentina. I think James Claridge is a player that I know Sam likes. Okay, we've got Jack Greaves as well, who's injured, and Ispan, who's played in pre-season. Sam, any of those boys do you think could break in?
Yeah, I think it could definitely be a season that we see a few more come in, mainly because of how thin the squad actually looks. I think Adam was right talking about earlier in the show about Amin Nabazada, I think potentially playing a bigger role this season. I feel like a lot of those names, though, have been almost banging on the door or been on the cusp for a long time of the first team, but haven't quite made that breakthrough yet. Leo Ramirez Span is one of them. Albert Ames, who I know wasn't mentioned there, is another one who I feel like have been in and around the first team for the last 2 to 3 years, but haven't quite made the jump yet. So it'll be interesting to see if they do. Ciccavani is the one that I'm excited about, though. I was really impressed with him against Hansa Rostock, as well as scoring. He absolutely smashed the bar. I was sat lower down in the Rookery for his shot against Hansa Rostock, rather than in my normal seat in the 1881, and I've never seen so much power behind a shot. So close to it. So yeah, I'm really excited by Ciccavani. But yeah, I think it's going to be a season where we see a few more of them involved throughout.
Dave, what do you make of this squad going into the new season as it stands? Ciccavani have made it in. Travis Akoma has gone in as well. After everything you've heard throughout this ep, how are you feeling?
Mixed at the moment. I think that the early games of the season will be interesting. And as always, what the team looks like on the first game of the season compared to what the team looks like the first game after the transfer window closes can always be quite different. But to summarise, we've got a goalkeeper coming in who sounds like he is quite similar to the 2 goalkeepers that we're not that bothered about losing. We've got not 2 centre backs and no one else. We've got a player in midfield in Loser who we all think is going to leave, but we're not sure. And we've got no strikers who we've got any faith in either. But around that, in the wide areas, the fullback areas, the wide areas, some of the midfielders, there's stuff to like about this squad, right? There's stuff to like about it. You can pick out some things to give you optimism. I think this clutch of new players from Udinese, I don't mind the fact that we've gone back to Udinese and we've signed all these players from Udinese. That's obviously worked for us well in the past at times. So it's fine, and that's what we've got to do at the moment. But I think the 2 big things are we need more goals and we need some centre backs to help out at the back. So if we can sort either of those areas out and we can have some sort of stability under this coach, we've not really talked about the coach much. We'll get to know him, won't we, more in the early weeks of the season. But if it can all come together and we can get a good start, then great. But I think, a lot of Watford fans will be feeling a bit pessimistic going into this season.
Well, we'll find out exactly what we think is going to happen next season when we're doing a predictions episode. So we'll look forward to that one, and we'll wrap things up there. Sam, thank you, mate.
Pleasure as always, Charlie. Thank you very much.
Adam, thank you for your time. Are you looking forward to the big game against Crawley this week?
I'm very much looking forward to it. It is a lot more fun when there's actually football on. Like, I think the most pessimistic month of the year seems to be, when it comes to Watford particularly, is always June, because there's just nothing else going on and we fill our lives with negative stories and so on. So at least when the game's on, we have something to analyse, something to talk about. As I say, I think the group through pre-season has been decent, so hopefully get off to a good start and take it from there.
Dave, Railway before Southampton?
Big time. I think I'm going to try and get down to the Crawley game, actually. Come on, let's do it properly. Let's get there from the get-go.
Love it. Thank you, lads. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week. And like I said, going into this season, we're going to be doing 2 episodes a week. So we're excited about that. We've got some fun content already in the can lined up. So we cannot wait to entertain you guys in what could be an interesting Watford season. So thanks for listening, and come on, you Horns.